Hello, I'm Asudullah Chaudhary, and in this video, I'm going to discuss PMBOK 6 edition. Whenever I go and talk about project management based on PMBOK 6 edition, there are a lot of rumors. The rumor is, in this PMBOK, we have lots of agile concept. When we talk about PMBOK, PMBOK is changing. But what I remember about the whole concept is it is actually the clash of two belief systems. Generally, if you want to see PMBOK, I would say find out only two headings. One heading in PMBOK 5th edition about project success, and the other heading in PMBOK 6 about project success. And you will find out how PMI changes its instance from one section, from one edition to another edition. But when I am going to compare or discuss PMBOK in this video, I'm going to decompose all my discussion into 6 sections. First section is all about framework, where I'm going to differentiate key concepts about project, operations, program, portfolio, and then how we are going to link up the life cycles and organization structure from overall project management perspective. Then I'm going to talk about initiation process group and their activities and cases, then planning process group, and then I'm going to talk about how execution and monitoring and controlling works together, and finally the role of closing process group in phase and or project. First of all, framework. The concept of framework is boundary. So when I talk about boundary, it means how we are defining and differentiating project from operations, from project activity, from program, and maybe you can differentiate it from portfolio. Otherwise, it's very evident that you don't need to be confused about project versus portfolio. So first of all, project. As far as PMI is concerned, PMI says project is temporary endeavor undertaken to create unique product, service, or result. But the biggest issue is when I see this thing, I see that you are missing the main component of project, and that is what is the intent, I would say, of project. The intent of project is to provide an output, and this is one of the key area where lot of confusions are. When I went to Oxford and I talk about project management, they have a different perspective from the project success criteria. And then when I wrote read lots of articles, and I find out that everyone is criticizing PMI and especially their success criteria in terms of completing projects within time, cost, and scope. And they are calling it triple constraint, iron triangle, golden triangle, and they say this is the dilemma of project management in PMI. But what mostly people are unable to dissect and identify is project means output. So if I am building a bridge where I'm going to collect toll tax, I'm not responsible as a project manager to collect toll tax. My job is to build the bridge. If I am building or writing a software code for a CRM system, I am responsible that my CRM is bug-free and stable application. But how many sales my sales team or an organization sales teams are making from them is not my responsibility. So in a very clear-cut definition, whenever you are going to embark a project as a project manager, you are responsible of output. But when you talk about operations, generally PMI says operations means that you are managing something which is ongoing and repetitive. But again, the issue is what is your success criteria? So in an outcome concept, the success criteria is how you are managing or delivering consistently the outcome of operations. So project is output but time bound. Operations are outcome, but there is no time. You just produce it and produce it and produce it. And how long you produce it? You produce it till you have demand, till market is not changed, till technology is not changed, till it is feasible for you. So you don't know how long your organization is going to run this operation. So project output, operations outcome. Project is temporary, operations is ongoing. But how long? It depends. It depends on lot of constraints. It depends on lot of factors that I have talked about. Then I'm going to talk about project versus program. So project is output. Interestingly, when people talk about program, they talk about program is a collection of multiple related projects. But this is stupidity. When you talk about program, my question is, what is the intent of a program? The intent of a program is to deliver outcome. Yes, outcome within time frame. So operations are also outcome, but there is no time frame. But when you talk about a program means to achieve an outcome within a time frame. So project is temporary, program is temporary, project is output, and program is outcome. Then when we talk about the concept of portfolio means how we are achieving a strategic objective. And to achieve strategic objectives, we need to run projects, programs, and operations. So technically, there's a difference and confusion between program versus portfolio. But program is temporary and outcome. You can say outcome or benefit is same like strategic objective. So I'm not going to debate about it. What I'm going to say is program is temporary, portfolio is not temporary. So here, what you are going to measure is in terms of definitions, in terms of concept. Portfolio manages the strategic objective with shared resources. Program manages or delivers the outcomes within itself and within a defined timeline. Then we move on and we talk about how we are going to deliver projects. You see, when you talk about projects, one of the biggest issue is how we run the projects. So to run the projects, you have to grab the project from its life cycle. And you need to understand that project life cycle is specific to organization industry. It's specific to environment. It's specific to project type. But one of the biggest stupid dilemma is people think the project life cycle is initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And my friend, this is not. These are process groups. These process groups helps you to run your project life cycle, but they are not your project life cycle. And as the new PMBOK emerges with the clash of two beliefs, now they are talking about which life cycle you want from your project. Does your project need adaptive life cycle, which is agile, or predictive life cycle that we generally talk about it? So here, 2 points. Number one, life cycle is not initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And when you talk about life cycle means how we are planning, how we are executing, how we are monitoring our phases and our project as a whole. Then the third concept, which is basically talking about in this scenario, is organization environment, organization culture, where we are managing the project or for whom we are managing the project. So generally when we talk about organization structures, people say that you cannot manage a project because you are working in functional organization or you are working in a projectized organization. But what I believe is they are again missing a critical element. What is the intent of PMI to provide us organization structures, either be functional, projectized, weak matrix, balanced matrix, strong matrix? The major reason of providing these 5 different type of organization structure is as a project manager, what role we can play. And PMI explicitly mentions that in functional organization, project manager works as expediter. In projectized organization, project manager is a strong project manager where every team member is reporting to them. But the problem is in functional organization, project management has less priority, and in projectized organization, project management has a high priority. The problem is when you run project in a functional organization, project manager has little or no authority, and generally projects get delayed. So here If you want to run a project as a project manager, you have to use your persuasion skill, your influence skill. You have to manage a project without an official authority. You may be a project manager by definition, but you are powerless project manager. That is why your job is mostly to report the progress to your management and ask your management to resolve things across the board. But when you talk about the projectized organization, you are a project manager, you have full authority. But once the project is done, you and your team is done. If your organization has some other opportunity for you guys, then it's okay. Otherwise, there is no home for the team. And when we blend both functional versus projectized, we have weak metrics where project manager is working as a coordinator, balance metrics where project manager is project manager. They have full authority, but the team has to report to both bosses, their regular functional heads and the project manager. And at the end, we have strong metrics where project manager has full authority. He or she is getting resources from multiple departments and everybody is reporting to the project manager till they are involved in the project. And when they are done, they move back to their respective department. But generally, I find out that if your project goes beyond 2 or 3 years, you generally don't have seat back in your department. But it's another story. So this is the environment where we run projects. And when we talk about the concept of a project manager, I would say project manager is an integrator. He or she integrates multiple aspects of project into it. PMI recently talks about triple constraint from the perspective of talent triangle. So what is talent triangle? The project manager is leader, project manager understands business and strategy, and project manager employs technical project management aspects to get the work done. So in this scenario, project manager has to juggle a lot of things and to get the work done. Generally, the key area that I see where right now PMI or rest of the employment world is focusing that how project manager is engaging stakeholders and interacting with them and getting the work done by aligning their expectation towards project management and project objective. Now, when we talk about project, one of the key area of a project then we talk about is project initiation. So when I talk about project initiation, my usual concept question is, what is the intent of project initiation? Generally say, whenever I ask people write down the activities of project initiation process group, they say in a project initiation we define business case, we write feasibility study, we define scope, and I say sorry, this is not the intent of initiation process group. The intent of initiation process group is decision as I described it, but generally PMI says the intent of initiation process group is authorization. And generally when we talk about decision, it means you are making two decisions. One decision is either we are going to do this project or not, or if we are doing this project, who will be the project manager. So who are taking this decision? This is not the decision that is made by project manager. This is the decision that is made by someone who is at the level who authorizes the project. Either you want to call it a sponsor, you want to call it portfolio manager, you want to call it program manager, you want to call it CEO, be it. But he or she is never be a project manager. Project manager is technically an output of initiation process group. And how we authorize or decide and announce our decision to rest of the organization is by giving them a charter. Charter is actually an appointment letter of a project manager. Generally, I heard that how long a charter would be, do you think that 2-page document is enough for charter? I say, it's not about how many pages. It's not about the length of content. The intent of charter is that you want all of your key stakeholders, all of those decision makers, those who can hurt your project, help your project, or all those functional managers who will eventually provide their resources to work in a project. They should be on board, they should agree on the project, and they should know who is actually the project manager of this project. This is the intent of project charter. And now it depends on you how many pages you want to clarify and write these concepts. Then once you have a charter, generally your project initiation process group is done. Then I have lots of people who say PMI talks about stakeholder identification. I say, hold on, once the project is initiated, the very next phase of a project is very important. And this is what I used to ask people, that what is one important aspect that you think is missing in project management? And you know what is missing in project management? The missing piece of project management is project management. Did you hear right? Yes. The missing piece of project management is project management. We don't have any phase that says project management. So generally when you got project, when you initiated project, the next phase of our project life cycle is technically the first phase from where project manager work starts is project management. You as a project manager starts from project management, where you are going to identify your stakeholders, where you have to build your project schedule, where you are going to identify risk, where you are going to list down your resources. These all activities are part of project management phase. So technically when you start initiating the phase of a project management, you can do stakeholder identification. And stakeholder identification, from the purpose of categorization, for the purpose of identification, PMI has kept into initiation. But this is not a one-time job. This is an ongoing job. You have to continuously identify and analyze the stakeholder and update your stakeholder register. It is not a one-time document. It's a dynamic document which continuously upgrades, updates, and monitored by the project manager. And it's not mandatory that you are going to share this document to everybody. So when you talk about the concept of stakeholders, stakeholder means these are those stakeholders who are going to impact your project or going to be impacted from your project. So they can impact your project positively, negatively, directly, indirectly, internally, or externally. So you have to identify what kind of stakeholders do you have and how you are going to analyze them. What are their influence in your project? How much impact they can, perform into your project? And if you can analyze these things, you can actually track their engagement. You can engage them based on this information. That is why PMI gives us 4 processes. Identify stakeholders, which is actually not just identification. Identify and analyze stakeholders. Then we have plan stakeholder engagement. How we are going to engage them. How we are track them. They are involved in the project. How many meetings they are basically attending. How they are actually, providing support to us. Then engage stakeholders. Involve them into meetings. And then finally track your engagements. How these stakeholders are still engaged in the system. If you can do it, I don't see a reason that you are going to put into it initiation, planning, execution, and monitoring, controlling. These are the classifications. These are the categorization. Actually, in each phase of a project life cycle, you are going to perform all these 4 things. So stakeholders are those who are going to impact you, either positively or negatively. Then, another important aspect that generally I club here is communication. Generally people say, hey, hello sir, project manager performs 85% of his time in communication. And then I say, to whom it communicate? Of course, stakeholders. So basically communication is very closely, tightly linked with stakeholders. So how many meetings you want, how many status reports you want, what type of a status report you want, what time you want to send in, how you are going to change into it, what is your status report criteria, how you are going to resolve the issue, how you are going to highlight the issue, how you are going to notify the risk. This is all needs to be tightly integrated with stakeholder and communication. This is how a project manager works. This is how he or she spends time in project. Then when you talk about the project management and so-called planning activities. The core aspect, which is technically the separate phase, is how you are going to gather the requirements. Generally, when we talk about requirements, we generally think of, requirements keep changing, client, never agrees on what he says. But what I found is most of the time, our technical team, our business analysts, when they go for gather the requirements, they are not listening to the customers, they are not listening to the users. What they are doing is they are writing their requirements that they can deliver, what they already know. So there is always a clash, there are always a difference, that what your stakeholder says and what you understood, what he wants and what you give them. So when you talk about stakeholders, I like the differentiation and categorization of different requirement types that PMI has provided: business requirements, stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, project requirements, transition requirements, quality requirements. And I have trained more than, say, 15,000 people. And when I talk all these 15,000 people and ask them how many type of requirements you gathered, mostly that is functional requirements, solution requirements. They never gather transition requirements. They don't know about project requirements. Somehow they know about quality requirements. And then you are complaining that your requirements are not complete. And what we are bogged down is that how we are going to do focus group, how we are going to manage, facilitated workshop, how we are going to do observation, how we are going to do voting. These all are tools and techniques, my dear. But what you want at the end of this requirement document, that you understand the overall picture, you understand stakeholder needs, you understand stakeholder expectations. And what we don't capture is their expectations. What we don't capture is what they understand from their environment. What are their constraints? What are their expectations? And if we are not understanding it, then we are not capturing a good document. We all talk about requirement document, requirement traceability metrics, but we don't talk about the key component of requirement traceability document, which is the source. How you are aligning the stakeholders' requirements from organization objectives or project objectives. This is the difficult part in requirement gathering aspect. And another important aspect when we talk about requirement gathering is requirement gathering is a very healthy document, but your project will not be done based on requirement document. You will actually convert your requirement document into a scope statement. So all your future decisions will be made on a scope statement. So when you are talking about a scope statement, you are reviewing your requirement document, doing some alternative identification, performing product analysis to finalize your project scope statement. And I like two areas which should be mentioned very clearly: in scope, what we are going to deliver, and out of scope, what we are not going to do. Yes, people generally say, Asad, whatever is in scope, other than in scope, is everything is out of scope. But I say there are a lot of components which are tightly linked, and you have to basically separate them and tell them that, look, this is that maybe you think that part of the project, this is maybe you think that you want to do it, but this is not the key area that will be available to you. This is not the key concept that we will provide to you. And if you can understand this whole concept, then your scope statement is a good document. Finally, when we are going to convert that scope statement into work breakdown structure, we have a lot of certified stupid people who thinks that WBS contains activities. Brother, sisters, WBS does not contain any activity. WBS is a deliverable oriented document, and there are three types of deliverables. Product deliverable, that you are going to give to your stakeholders. Project deliverable, that you need to manage your project. Project management deliverable, how you are going to manage your project. you have to include all these three deliverables into your WBS. Generally, what we understand from WBS is a deliverable oriented document. The lowest level of WBS is work package, and work package contain activities, and work package has X amount of duration and cost, and this is all not the right concept. The whole WBS is a deliverable oriented document. Yes, the lowest level of WBS is work package. Yes, we develop WBS by decomposing the second layer either as phases or project components, but WBS never ever contain your activities. Generally, there are two separate documents. One, WBS. The lowest level of WBS is work package, but another document, activity list. And we create activity list by decomposing work packages. So in WBS, we decompose deliverable into deliverable, deliverable into deliverable, deliverable into deliverable, until we have the lowest level of deliverable, which we call work package. But here in activity list and another document, we decompose our work package into activities, and we identify time, cost, resources on activities. So these are my schedule activities that provide me how we will deliver our work package. Generally, when we define activities and milestones. Milestones means significant event in a project plan. These are the points, these are the important decisions point where we need to inform our management. Generally, we say that milestones are those activities which has zero duration, and we can agree with that thing. Plus minus, if you go from any software tool, it can allow us that we can set any activity which has 5, 7, 10 duration, and we can set it as a milestone. But for the definition purpose, from the concept purpose, milestones are markers. Milestones are significant events. Then after having the milestones, what we need to sequence them. The concept is not about how we are sequencing it. The concept is what is the intent of sequencing. The intent of sequencing is that sequencing provides us network diagram. And if our sequencing is not right, we will not be able to calculate the final duration of our project. So technically, the network diagram helps us to calculate our actual duration. So if your project's the sequence diagram is not right, your duration is not right. As simple as that. Yes, you need to use precedence diagramming method. You need to use lead time and lag time to develop network diagram, but these are the common tools. Once I have the sequence diagram, then I go and estimate the resources. Either these are work resources or material resources. But these work and material resources, I need to carefully identify that when I need them, how many I need them, and how I'm going to engage them in my project. And generally, when I talk about project, I used to say, please, in terms of human resources, you should be very careful, because there are lot of resources where you want them to do the work, but you cannot control them. So if you have some resources whom you are not controlling, don't give them activities. That's my recommendation. Give them work packages and track work packages and let them decompose their work packages into activities and manage it. That's not your job. That's their job. Agree on the end date, agree on the deadline, build some buffer, and rest manage it. Because if you are trying to manage every single activity of those resources who do not report to you directly, you are actually stepping into a danger zone. Then when we have our resources into our system, then we go and estimate the duration. Generally, the techniques that we have to estimate the duration are top-down estimation, which are also be used to call as analogous estimation based on previous history, parametric estimation, 3-point estimation, bottom-up estimation. But these tools are the same tools that will also help you to identify your cost. But when I talk about the cost, we generally say we have 3 different types of cost estimates. A rough order magnitude, where my range is -25% to 75% because I am uncertain about the overall scope. Then we have budgetary -10 to 25%, and definitive means -5 to plus 10% cost of the overall thing. Once I have all these things, then I go and identify the risk. And I can identify risk earlier, but when I say risk, risk means uncertainty. Risk means uncertain events. And risk may be positive or negative. PMI gave us 7 processes. Out of 7 processes, 5 are in planning process groups. But when I do the project management, some of them are integrating in one. So the first is plan risk management. Plan risk management actually provides me the definition of risk. What is the definition of high risk? What is the definition of low risk? So if you cannot define these terms, the rest of the thing does not mean anything. So plan risk management gives me an output called risk management plan, and risk management plan gives me risk methodology, risk timing, risk contingency, criteria for prioritizing my risk, criteria for identifying the rank of the risk, and the definition of high and low and medium risk. Then we go and identify the risk. When I say identify the risk, don't judge the risk. My target is to check all the documents, to check the assumptions of my projects and see what are the assumptions that can go wrong and can convert into risk and issues. So here, I am not judging the risk. I am just saying that it is a risk. Is it a big risk or a small risk or a risk? Doesn't matter. For me, at that specific point of time, is just a risk. Then after that, I am going to use the perform qualitative risk analysis process, where I am going to analyze and see subjectively which are high priority risk and which are low priority risk. And if we need, we can go for the next process where we are going to perform quantitative risk analysis. And here I am going to objectively see, numerically calculate the value, and we can use decision tree analysis, expected monetary value, and other tools to see the value of the risk and identify the actual cost. And then finally, we have to plan risk responses, and we have to see both negative risk planning and positive risk planning. So if I have go to identify the techniques that we can use to identify or the plan the negative risk, we have to see the couple of methods like escalations, like avoid, like mitigation, like transference, like acceptance. So the same way, we have couple of techniques for positive risk. The techniques for positive risk are same: escalation, enhancement, exploitation, sharing, and acceptance. That way, we actually work on the overall concept. Now, we have risk register with risk response plans. We need to move to develop a schedule process. And here we actually need to finalize our schedule baseline. Generally, people ask me, Asad, what is the difference between project schedule versus schedule baseline? So technically, both are same documents, but the difference is that your schedule baseline is an approved version of project schedule. So if you want to get your schedule baseline, you can use 3 tools. Number 1, critical path method. Number 2, resource optimization techniques. And number 3 is your schedule compression techniques. Critical path method, generally the myth is critical path means it has critical or technically difficult activities. But generally, critical path means the path that we are calling as a critical has the activities which actually gives us the project duration. So maybe we have 4 or 5 or 6 paths, but the path whose activities, if we sum up the duration of all the activities of a path, if it is the highest number of days, then it is my critical path. So critical path does not mean technically critical activities. Critical path means these are the activities which sum up my project schedule. Then, if you want to see that my critical path is right, my project duration is right, I have to see, is there any resource optimization need? If you look at the resource optimization need, it is a classical error. Generally, when I see project plan, what I see is people don't use their resources on project schedule. And if they do, they generally over allocate one resource on multiple activities which are performing at the same time. Like right now, I'm doing this training with you guys, and right now I'm also doing some other things. That's not possible. Right now I'm here. So if I am involved in 2 simultaneous activities at the same time, it means this is a scheduling error. And to remove it, I will use resource labeling. Then when we talk about the concept of resource optimization, the other technique under the resource optimization is resource smoothing. I love resource smoothing because it helps me to reallocate my resources who are involved on non-critical path activities, and I can use their skills on critical path activities. It will help me to make sure that my critical path activity will come on time, but at the same time I can leverage my float which is available on non-critical path activities, and I will be on safe side. Then if my project plan is done, it's there is no error into it, I will go and see that either my management is going to approve my overall duration, or they want, as usual, some cut in my project duration. So if they want reduction in my project duration, I can use schedule compression techniques. And schedule compression techniques basically use two further techniques. Crashing. In crashing, I am decreasing the duration of project activities by increasing the number of hours. And the other is fast tracking. Either technically fast tracking is a lead time where I am basically overlapping couple of activities and starting them before their actual planned start dates. So that way I can squeeze and shorten my project duration without compromising the quality and scope. So if my duration is agreed by my management, it means my schedule baseline is there. Now I have to seal my cost baseline. Cost baseline is actually the amount that management is given to project manager to manage a project. And the cost baseline is not just the project cost estimates. Actually, cost baseline is project estimates plus cost baseline, and management is not keeping themselves a cost baseline. They are keeping themselves as project budgets, and project budget means cost baseline plus management reserve. Generally, we can call management reserve as unknown, or as I learned in Oxford, is black swans. If we have done this thing, now from here we are going to our third process group, which is execution. One of the biggest dilemma of execution is generally we think that execution means we, in the concept of software development, we are doing coding. In the concept of construction, we are actually doing construction, or in the concept of research, we are doing research. But when we talk about execution, I think this is the biggest mistake. So let's suppose in the concept of software development, analyzing the requirements or designing the prototype, this is all execution. If we talk about construction, going for site surveys, building a design layout for my construction, this is also execution. In terms of research, doing some surveys, gathering requirements, this is also execution. So execution does not mean the technical work, does not mean the development. Whatever we are doing in terms of a phase activity or in terms of project activity is referred as execution. So what is the intent of execution? The intent of execution is to have deliverables. So basically, if we compare, the intent of initiation is authorization. The intent of planning is to do baselines, to create baselines. And the intent of execution is to have deliverables. So when we complete the project, that's a deliverable. When we complete phase, that's a deliverable. When we complete couple of work packages, again, these are also deliverables. So how we are going to get deliverables? I have wrote a couple of cases. One of the case in terms of deliverable is that happy case, angry case, and my famous chi chu cha case. So happy case means everything goes as per the plan and we got our deliverables accepted from my end user. So how it goes, in a sequence. So first of all, as a project manager, I will review my project management plan. I will see that what are my baselines and how I'm going to execute my scope, how I'm going to review my schedule, how I'm going to manage stress. So these all are part of project management plan. Then I need to gather my project team. So to gather my project team, I can use pre-assignment, negotiation, virtual team, so that I can gather, I can acquire my resources and give them the assignments. Then the third thing is, if I have the resources, how I am going to help them work together, how they move from I mindset to we mindset, how they are collaborating with each other, how I'm using their personal assessment to find their strengths and let them work together based on their strengths. So this is my job, to mingle with my team, to find their strengths and help them in terms of their weaknesses and to basically collaborate with them to get the work done. Once my team is working together, what I need from them is the deliverables. Once they have produced the deliverable, technically the execution part is done. Now I will move, or I will go with this deliverable into monitoring and controlling process group, and here I will ask my internal quality to perform audit, because I want to make sure that the deliverables that my team has produced is based on quality metrics and quality management plan. And the major output I want from my control quality process is verified deliverable. This verified deliverable will then send to validate scope process in scope management knowledge area, where I will ask my end users to come and audit my verified deliverables and give me accepted deliverable. If they are agreed to what we have produced, that's a happy case. Everything has gone as per the requirement. But let's suppose if they are not happy, if they said that that my team produced the deliverable is not up to the mark, then in validated scope, rather than getting accepted deliverable, I will get the change request, and I have to go to change control board with options, and then we'll see that what options we are going to opt for it, and then how we are moving from perform integrated change control to again back to execution. And this time we are not going with the project management plan, we are going with the approved change request. And this approved change request is the selected option by change control board, that this is the problem, this is the defect that you had, and now you go back and implement it and see how you did it right this time. And finally, in the case of Chichucha case, actually here what I'm trying to achieve for my team is we have done all things right, there is no issue, but client says that okay, this is what I have said, but somehow I want some updates, I want some changes. So I generally say, don't say no, see what leverage you have, how you can facilitate your stakeholders, or how you can use your management support to say no, so that it does not hurt you as a project manager. What happens is that most of the time as a project manager we refuse to changes, and then they go to our managers, and then our manager says just do it, and we stand nowhere. So this is one of the biggest dilemma. That's why I call them chi chu cha case. So another aspect of execution and monitoring controlling is when we see the core output of execution, that is deliverable, but sometimes we got change requests. Generally people think that change request means new updates, but that's not true. PMI says change request means preventive action, change request means corrective action, change request means updates, change request means defects. So anything that requires alteration, modification, upgradation of project management plan, that is actually the change request. And we can have change requests during execution, we can have change requests during monitoring and controlling, and whenever we have a change request as a project manager, my job is to assess how much impact it is going to do on my project plan, my baseline, and to create some options before going to the change control board. So my responsibility is to approach change control board with a couple of options, so that they can review the options and see the impact of multiple options on the baseline, and select one option based on the consideration of client value, project value, client relationship, and then this new approved version is my new baseline. This is my new project management plan, and as a project manager, it's my responsibility to update the project management plan and get approval on it. So my success now will be measured on new baseline rather than the initial baseline. So this is how we are actually basically executing the project. But when we talk about the fourth process group of the whole system is monitor and control. In monitor and control, what I'm trying to get, I'm trying to provide status of my project, I'm trying to resolve risk and issues. I want my status in terms of not time and cost, but also in terms of time, cost, and scope. So the key, I would say, tool or the technique that I'm going to use to monitor my status is earned value management. Earned value management does not just give me the lagging indicator that what has happened, it also gives me the future information that we call it leading indicator. So if I want to monitor my project status, I should focus on both lagging indicators and leading indicators. That's way we can actually manage the overall project. And when I'm going to look into it, the formula or the three important concepts of earned value management are, which I like a lot, is planned value, actual cost, and earned value. And based on these three variables, I can calculate my schedule variance, cost variance, schedule performance index, cost performance index, and this information will help me to find out the lagging indicators of my project. But if I want to find out the future forecast of my project, I have to go for the new budget. So when I started the project, my budget was budget at completion, BAC. But if I have to find my new budget, that would be EAC, estimated and completion. And I have to see that how much money I need to do the remaining work. If I want to calculate my remaining cost, remaining duration of my project based on new budget, then I have to find out ETC, estimate to complete, and that's how I actually got my forecasted value of my project. So as a project manager, my job is to see how I am performing, where I need corrective action, where I need some change request. So this is how the overall scenario works. But as we go and see the project plans, one of the key aspects of project is procurement. As a project manager, it's not necessary that you are doing all the procurement in heavy organization, heavy asset based organization like oil and gas, manufacturing. If you are doing engineering, if you are doing project, your organization procurement department are in play. What you need to do is you need to see what kind of inventory, what kind of services you want outside from your organization. And whenever you plan some procurement in your project, make sure every time whenever you talk about procurement, you are a buyer. As a buyer, what are your requirements? So as a buyer, you need to write your statement of work. You have to identify your sellers. You have to identify the seller selection criteria. And based on these things, you go for advertisement. You will find out who is applicable, who is more variable, valuable, cheaper for your project, and then select the vendor from your project. And finally, that's your job, that throughout the project you actually manage your procurements and especially manage the claims and changes related to your procurement. Finally, the last part of our project concepts are closing process group. You see, closing process group, when I want to talk about closing process group, I say you must understand three factors of closing process group. Number one, closing is for both project and phase. Number two, you have to do closing either your project is successful or not. Number three, administrative closure is different than project closure. So when you talk about project closure, it means handing over the project to the client, getting their feedback, financially closing the thing. But when you talk about administrative closure, it means indexing and archiving records, resolving any claims, or doing the documentation, or these things for your project. So this is how we actually review the overall project of our scenario. So if I have to again sum up the whole things that we talked about, is framework means boundary. The boundary helps us to clarify the definitions and differentiate the initiatives. Either those initiatives are project, operations, project activity, or programs. Then, during the overall scenario, initiation means authorization, or you can say initiation means overall concept of decision. So generally in initiation, we do two decisions. Are we going to do this project or not? And if we are going to do this project, then who will be my project manager? In planning, it's basically mostly project management, and we need to find we need to create the baseline, the scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline. When you talk about execution, basically I'm trying to find out my deliverables, and deliverable means the things that we need, the things that my team is delivering. And finally, monitoring, controlling, yes, status, but actually we are getting accepted deliverables. In monitoring controlling, we are getting individual deliverables. But in closing project or phase, we are getting our whole project or phase closed. That's how I define the concept of PMBOK in a fast forward way. For those who are looking for exam, so in the exam concept, when you talk about initiation process group, we have 23 questions out of 175. Generally in exam we have 200 questions. Out of 200 questions there are 175 questions in which you got marks, but there are 25 questions which PMI referred as pre-test. There are no marks for them. So if I have to divide 175 questions in 5 process domains: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, and closing. So in initiation you will have 23 questions. But when you talk about initiation is a combination of framework part, which is chapter number 1, chapter number 2, chapter number 3, and process number 4.1 and 13.1 of initiation process group. Then we have 24 processes in planning process group. I generally say that planning is lengthy, but generally the exam is easy because you need to pass or you need to attempt 2 questions per process. 3 processes like plan scope management, plan schedule management, plan cost management, you can just go through and skim it. Remaining processes are 21. So technically you have 2 processes from each 21 process. So that makes 42 questions. So in initiation we have 23 questions. In planning we have 42 questions. Then we have execution, 10 processes and 54 questions. This is where rubber meets the road, because generally people are unable to make this phase, make this domain right. Generally, if you can look into it, you have around 5 questions per process. And if you look at the process, generally 6 to 7 processes are those which are more towards people oriented, like acquire resources, develop team, manage communication, manage stakeholder engagement. All these 5 requires you to understand leadership skills, negotiation skills, communication skills, decision making skills, problem solving skills. So this is not just the concept of theory. This is how you implement your concept and theory in a given situation. Then we have monitoring and controlling. And in monitoring and controlling, we have 44 questions. And how you are going to resolve change management, how you are going to get accepted deliverable, how you are going to control, how you are going to calculate and value management. These are the main areas of monitoring and controlling. Finally, we have closing process group, where you need to see that how you are going to close the project, what are the situations to close the project, and importantly, what are your closing reports, what are your closing documents, lesson learned. This is how the whole overall scenario works. So I hope I gave you the overall picture of PMBOK with some question and answer reviews as per the exam. Thank you and see you next.